You got death wobble? You need a track bar, guaranteed 100% gonna fix it every time. Maybe. So what a track bar does is it centers the axle under the vehicle. One side of the track bar is gonna hook to the axle, one side is gonna come up and hook to the frame. Now, a stock track bar is gonna be a fixed length. This one's out of a JL. This one had like 30 miles on it, so there's nothing wrong with it. But it's gonna have rubber bushings on each end of it, and then it's gonna come with obviously your factory mounting hardware that's gonna mount to a front axle bracket. When we're looking at track bars for death wobble, we wanna be very, very critical because a tiny, tiny little bit of movement out of them can give you a violent death wobble. So when it's inside the vehicle, or actually for that matter, when I'm gonna have one of my buddies either jump inside the Jeep with at ride height right on with weight on the vehicle and shake the wheel back and forth, and I'm gonna watch these joints. I'm gonna look for lateral movement, side to side in them. Or I could get a pry bar in there if I'm all by myself, get a pry bar in there, chuck it back and forth, look for lateral movement in it, and you'll feel it. If these stock joints are bad, they get quite a bit of play in them. Now when we're putting lifts in them, we're always switching out to 9/16 hardware, and for the most part, even if I'm doing or I'm working on a TJ or XJ or anything like that, I go the biggest hardware I can to fit as snug as I can in any of those holes. Here's a factory track bar bracket that I actually cut off of a JK, and it's kind of tough to see, but the holes were oblong, just a tiny bit side to side where it kind of woolered itself out. And that was enough to give it violent death wobble. What I did is I cut this off and went to a 1/4 inch bracket on there. The stock mounting hardware inside there was chucking back and forth, and then even when we went to a 9/16, it was still kind of loose. It tightened it up quite a bit, but it was still a little bit loose. So we had no choice but to chop the bracket off, went to a stronger bracket at that point. Now, so when we lift the vehicle, with our stock fixed length track bar, it's gonna swing the axle over and push it over. We want an adjustable length so we can center it back underneath the vehicle. There's tons of different adjustable lengths on the market. We always stress, like any product we want to talk about, is buy American, buy quality, buy once. So let's sit down and look at what different track bars are, what they're built out of and what they're designed for. There's all kinds of different styles, and for the most part, we're gonna look at the rod ends on them to determine what their best use is. You could go to a Heim joint style. Heim joint style is going to get more articulation out of the joint. So if we're talking rock crawler, we want max articulation. That's great. It's going to flex awesome. It's going to work really good. It's going to put more vibration through the joint from the road force. So if it's daily driver, you can run it. I mean, I've run before, but know that like any of your Heim joints or anything like that is going to come with more maintenance. So squeaky rod ends, stuff like that, you're going to have to grease it more. It is a wearing item. It is going to be, it's serviced outside the vehicle. You can pop it off, put a new one on there, but you're going to have to. It is going to wear out over time. If we're not so worried, we don't want to be dealing with squeaky joints or maintenance or anything like that, we can switch out to like a rubber style joint. Most of your adjustable track bars that are rubber style joints are going to go to a stronger, more dense rubber, so it's not going to wear out as quickly as like the stock one. They're going to go to a stronger tube. It's going to be adjustable one way or another, so we can make it longer or shorter to center that axle. There's tons of good ones on the market, so we can always figure that out. But when it's coming to death wobble, like I say, we got to be very, very critical of all the mounting points, making sure everything's as snug as we can. I don't want to see lateral movement. I don't want to see side-to-side movement, because that little tiny bit of movement right there, it can resonate and make a huge, huge wobble and a really violent wobble on the road. So we don't want to just obviously toss stuff in there, but let's be really critical looking at all them joints. The other style of adjustable track bar is going to run similar to stock rubber bushings in it, or we can run polys in them too, but they're a lot more robust. They're going to run a lot bigger bushing in it. It'll be adjustable right there, whereas this one you have to take it off the vehicle, you crack the nut, adjust it, center the axle, tighten it back up, put it back on the vehicle. There is on-vehicle adjustable track bars like this. They work out really nice. The biggest thing is, like we say, we always stress, buy good quality parts, buy American, you'll be a lot happier. You won't buy twice, and it'll last a lot longer that way. Okay, let's look at a custom design suspension. Now, all I'm worried about is the relationship between the point where the pitman arm mounts on the drag link and the knuckle where it mounts, and the point where the track bar mounts on the frame and the track bar mounts on the axle side. A custom one, for the most part, you're gonna have multiple mounting positions. So if I'm running different pitman arms, or if I'm switching everything around and I wanna run different points, if I wanted to not run a high steer arm and I wanted to run a low steer arm for anything like that, I can change the bolt holes on both sides of them and make them match. So as long as I can keep that angle the same, I'm good to go. Now, if for some reason that you couldn't change it, there was, the angles are just off and you can't address it, you have to find a way. Either you're gonna have to cut the bracket off of one side, or you're gonna have to change the bracket on the frame side. You're gonna have to find a way to make that work, because unless you can get these two angles dialed in, you're always gonna have bumps here. It's not something very hard to fix. It's just, as long as you can understand the relationship between those two has to be the same as far as the degrees of difference. And it's pretty easy. All right, I'm gonna beat a dead horse here real quick because I feel like it's really important to understand. So let's use some crappy pictures to show it. We got our track bar and our drag link. I'm not worried about the shape of either of these. They can have dippy-doos in them, whatever it takes to clear the parts. But what I'm worried about is the mounts, okay? Where they mount and the degrees. So this angle from the mounts on each side, from the track bar to the axle and the pitman arm to the knuckle, needs to be the same. If they're not, and there's something like this at a different angle, these two linkages, they're pivoting off of the pitman arm and the track bar mount. They're gonna move in a different arc. At that point, it's gonna give you bump steer. When you hit a bump and the suspension moves up, they're gonna move at different angles. So if I put a drop pitman arm in and drop this down, either I need to figure out a way to drop the frame side mount, or the track bar, I'm gonna have to raise it up to bring these two right back into the same angle, and then they're parallel, and we're good to go at that point. All right, so I don't have a TJ at the shop right now, but I do have some TJ parts, so we can get an idea of what to expect and what to look for common failures. Now, as far as Jeeps go, TJs, MJs, XJs, your LJs, those are all gonna have very, very similar front suspensions in them, so this will all apply to the same ones. Here is the adjustable end to a TJ front adjustable track bar. If you look at it, this is the bolt we're using in the JKs and the JLs. It's substantially smaller. So you gotta be very crucial to look at the bolt size inside the bushing and then the bolt size inside the bracket. And we see them on TJs, the fronts and rears for the most part. I've had some rears that act really goofy on the road and they're wallering out the bracket. They're working side to side. You can either go to a new, stronger bracket and weld it on the axle, or, I mean, for the most part, you can grind it down, put a new washer on there, tighten up the clearances, get the biggest bolt you can that can even fit inside there to just tighten up those clearances. That's gonna be on the axle side of it. On the frame side of it, they're using, this is an upgraded one, but on your factory setup, it's gonna be a tie rod end style joint on the frame. And the Dodge trucks use the same one. It's just the Dodge truck's gonna be bigger. That's a really common failure point on them. That's why, like a company like this, they run a new setup that's more of a Heim joint style, that's greasable and a lot stronger than a tie rod end style. But you can watch that tie rod end as you're shaking the steering wheel back side to side. Watch for play laterally in it, and that can attribute to death wobble all day long. And we're looking for minimal play. I mean, this stuff that we're looking for, you gotta be really crucial and look at it very close, because just a tiny, tiny little bit of play there will cause some violent on-road characteristics. So after seeing what a track bar really does, it centers the front axle under the vehicle. It's pretty easy to see how it could cause death wobble. And if you had a bolt that wasn't sitting right in the bracket or a bushing worn out, absolutely, it could cause death wobble all day long. But before we go replacing anything, let's get in there, have somebody shake the steering wheel side to side, or get a pry bar in there. Let's make sure it's loose, and then we can find a better part to replace it with and take care of this thing, make it drive great.